listening to PJ and Friends on pjandfriends.com. Orlando, Florida.
PJ and Friends is proud to present another edition of their Spotlight interview series. And now, welcome your host, PJ.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is another edition of our Spotlight series. We have Mark Lainer and Darren Vierday. Mark and Darren were a short-lived thing we had, which was, what was it? Was it comedy?
More perfect union.
Yeah, more perfect union. There you go. But these guys are very good at politics and stuff like that. And a lot has gone on in the world, and since the election or lack thereof, especially here in Florida, where no one turned out, so many changes have been gone. And I am a layman as it relates to this stuff, and you guys are so well versed. And I thought it would be cool to have you on just to talk about what's going on. So first, what I want to talk about is, okay, we in Florida here recently had a gubernatorial election, and I, like anybody else, was kind of shocked that we re-elected a complete moron in the office. What happened? Where'd we go wrong?
Well, I would say there's a couple things.
Go ahead.
One is the fact that the avalanche of campaign ads really did a job on Charlie Crist. I think also Charlie Crist was not anybody that Democrats could really get ardent about. He was somebody who had been a Republican. He had kind of drifted whichever way the political winds pushed him, and now he was a Democrat. So it wasn't like you had the kind of fierce devotion that like an Elizabeth Warren or something brings out. So I think that the combination of things really did in Charlie Crist and helped Rick Scott get elected.
You also had a primary that on the Democratic side that was largely decided before the voters even got a chance to know the candidates, because the Florida Democratic Party seemed to come out in full support for Charlie Crist, even though, and this was even before Charlie Crist got in the race, they had a state senator from South Florida, Nan Rich, who was also in the race. I'm not certain whether she would be a viable candidate or not once she got to the general, but they really froze her out of a lot of activity. And Crist has a lot of support from the people that write the big checks and support a lot of Democratic politicians. Locally here, Crist had the support of John Morgan, who was running him for governor before he even declared. So you had a lot of things that there was a lot of groupthink going on, that Charlie Crist is going to be the centrist moderate who Floridians want and need in the mold of a Bill Nelson or a Bob Graham. But they weren't buying it, so they didn't show up.
I think it's the same problem we may run into in the presidential election if there isn't a viable alternative to Hillary Clinton that can actually be heard. Because as much as I think Hillary would be a good president, I'm not sure, because I have my qualms about how Bill was president, but and she's very corporatist. But the fact is that if we have a coronation rather than a primary, then we run the risk of not having a tested candidate when it comes down to the actual election. Plus, the ideas haven't had a chance to really get formulated in a way that the dialectic, the notion of having the thesis, the antithesis, and then the synthesis, that never has a chance to actually come to be.
All right, who would you have liked to have been elected? Granted, we were limited to Crist, and we were limited because those are the two forefront runners there. They were the powerhouses that were there. And I know this is a speculation. What would the climate have been had it been Crist? What do you think would that have been? Obviously, the better choice compared. But what would our future be different? How would it be different if had it been elected?
Well, if we had a Democratic governor with a Republican-dominated legislature, and I believe that the House is actually a veto-proof majority of Republicans. So the Senate is not. The Senate is still kind of moderate. But we would have had a situation like we're going to have for the next few years, which is the president, or in this case, the Democratic governor of Florida, would have a lot of proposals that would be not enacted by the Republican legislature, and the Republican legislature would put forth bills like they have a bill right now that is going to allow concealed carry weapons permits on college campuses, to crowdsource security instead of people that are actually trained for it, or the bill from Senator Alan Hayes from Umatilla that will make 8th graders have to watch the new Dinesh D'Souza film about America as part of their American history class. Those ideas would be vetoed if they pass.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding you, Mark. Yeah.
Convicted criminal for voter fraud? Him?
Yeah. So yeah, if you had a Democratic, you may or may not have Medicaid expansion in this state to help with the people that are make too little to get federal subsidies enough to afford their health coverage, but make too much to qualify for Medicaid as it stands, or not have children. So that's one thing that I don't know if a Democratic governor would be able to do that. But the main thing is he would stop things from happening. So anyway, go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say the other thing that's coming down the pike is the Supreme Court is hearing a case that will possibly make all the subsidies for people in states where there is no state-run health exchange be ineligible, which means that if you're in a state like Florida, where there's no state-run exchange, where you had to get health care coverage on the federal exchange, you would not get a subsidy for your insurance, which means it would become relatively unaffordable. So the fact is that there are a lot of issues that maybe a Democratic governor couldn't change, but could at least kind of steer the ship a little bit away from the kind of iceberg we're heading toward.
Yeah. If that decision goes through, by the way, that's 1.3 million people that will not be able to afford their health insurance in the state of Florida.
Yeah,
by a conservative. Just in Florida alone. So. And
it's the majority of states that don't have the state-run health exchanges because they're run by Republicans, and so they refuse to set up. In fact, in states like Mississippi had a federal or a state exchange set up, and then when the governor came in, he had them take it down. So, I mean, that's the kind of problem that you run into. But you're not going to really change that unless you have much more activity among local Democrats for getting Democrats elected to the state legislature and to local legislatures as well.
So let me ask you that, though. And I, again, don't know if you're going to have the answer to this. Now income tax has to have your insurance listed. I haven't even looked at how that's going to work, but how they're going to validate that. But so for those people in Florida that did not qualify for Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, but because of our state's decision not to allow the extended of Medicare, are they getting in trouble? Are they going to be held accountable for not having insurance?
Yeah, they'll have to pay the penalty. They will have to pay the penalty. I don't remember if the penalty is going to be enacted with this tax year, but they will have to pay the penalty because the choice is carry health insurance or not. And if not, then you have to pay a penalty, which is usually cheaper than if you were carrying health insurance, but it's basically, subsidized. You're paying the subsidy for everybody else's health care.
Well, at the moment, I think it's only like $100 or something like that. It's very low. It slides up over the next course of years to a percentage of your adjusted gross income, I believe.
Yeah.
But at the moment, it's still very, very low, and it's cheaper than actually having insurance, but which is more costly to society, having people with health insurance or people without.
And to you as well if you get sick, of course.
Well, sure. on all levels, it makes a lot of sense to have people with healthcare insurance. It just is the way that I mean, I would prefer to have Medicare for all, is what I would prefer, which is a single payer system, not a single source, not like the national health care necessarily in England, but something where all of the medical bills are paid through a single payer, instead of having multiple insurance companies with multiple rules and multiple negotiations with multiple drug companies and doctors. You would have one system that everybody would be in from birth to death, and you wouldn't have to keep switching. Every time you switch a job, your insurance wouldn't change.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand how that would work. See, my side of things is as far as medical and stuff like that, I'm a very private person in that sense. What I mean by that is I want to control what's done. For example, I was recently in December in the hospital, and I shared some of this with Darren a couple weeks back. I have an ulcer, and I was in there, and I had all sorts of problems. And I had literally threatened the people there to look at the ulcer, not the heart side of things, because they were all bent on doing all sorts of things that really had nothing to do with what I was there for. And I had to threaten the guy's license to get him to really do what he needed to do. And finally, they did it reluctantly before trying to throw me out of the hospital. But they billed the insurance company $74,000 for 3 days in the hospital. And as I broke down and I broke down the app, of course, some of it's very vague. It's some of the stuff that they billed was lab work for $12,000, lab work. But then tell you what the lab work is. Then there was a surgeon. Then there was anesthesia. I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't have surgery, And then of course, some of the things were farmed out. So they'll have contractors, like in the ER. The ER doctor will be a contracted service. So then you get a bill from them. And so I'm looking at this stuff, and it looked like it was a credit card for them to just run up the bill. And what I noticed was when you drilled down and you saw what they actually paid, while they charged $74,000, I think the insurance company, when it was done with their contracted rates, they paid far less than that. And what it's telling me is like when you see a burger on sale, 2 for $1, it doesn't cost them $1 to make that burger. So when we see this, that they're reducing this, when they say, oh, that CAT scan costs $10,000, but they're charging the insurance company $100, it doesn't cost them $10,000 to do that damn thing. And while I understand it's a business in some, and they need to make money, and we want to advance stuff, we want people, but they're really ripping people. I wish, hell, but we're in a state where our governor was a crook for Medicare fraud. So, and he's elected, and I'm just, this just is beyond me. What happened?
Well, that's the system, PJ. It's a system we have. The problem is with insurance companies. Insurance companies negotiate rates. So the way it works is you get charged a certain amount by the hospital.
Right.
Now, almost nobody pays the full amount that a hospital charges. A hospital basically, it is charging a retail price for something that will actually be discounted. So the different insurance companies have different negotiated rates with the hospitals and with the different lab companies and with pharmaceutical companies. And then what happens is they negotiate a rate, they pay that portion of it, and then they leave you a certain portion to pay based on your deductible. Now, if you had a Medicare for all system, it would be, you would go into the hospital and you might not even have any deductible whatsoever. It would all be paid for through the federal government, like Medicare is.
Right.
And you could buy supplemental insurance if you wanted supplemental insurance to add to what you had. So you would have a baseline plan, but then you could improve your plan if you have the wherewithal to do it. The problem is in our system, the way it is right now, we have a myriad of insurance companies. They each have different negotiated rates, and so the hospitals charge a retail rate, and then there's a negotiation that goes on. And so the amount that you see at the bottom is whatever that negotiated rate is. And it is crazy. I mean, it really is crazy.
So with what you're proposing, if we had a insurance structure like that or a healthcare structure like that, would our doctors still be driving around in these expensive cars, or would they be, because if as a nation we had that kind of a healthcare system, then obviously they wouldn't be trying to bill for a $10,000 procedure that costs $100. Well, the government would pay $5,000 for a hammer, so I don't know. But my point is, would they still be rich people?
Yeah, there's doctors
sure.
there's doctors who specialize in only Medicare patients now, that specialize only in like senior care or elder care,
right,
that are doing just fine. But the savings is passed along because we have one negotiation to make, or maybe a whole statewide negotiation to make, because you're dealing with the federal government. Same thing like the federal government needs to buy office supplies. They go to an office supply store and they get competing bids off of them, but eventually they pick one vendor that's going to give them the lowest price, because the government is going to buy a lot of them, just like insurance. And then
that's why we don't negotiate
manpower
prices for Medicare.
Right.
We don't negotiate drug prices, which costs a lot to the government.
So that confuses me. There was a period of time where I had no insurance, and I'm diabetic, and I had to get so I was ordering drugs from overseas. Now, what threw me was, the stuff I couldn't get, like stuff I could get if I didn't have. It wasn't so much that I couldn't afford it, because a lot of stuff is $4 at Walmart, but I couldn't get a prescription because I couldn't afford to see the doctor. But I knew what I had, I knew what I took, so I would just order them from overseas. What kills me is the price from overseas is so much far less than. So I don't know. I guess. I guess it's an age-old argument. I frustrates me to see people making money off of whether you live or die, and here we are talking that we're a humane species. I guess we're not. We're gonna take a quick break, and then we will be right back.
You're listening to PJ and Friends on PJandFriends.com. Orlando, Florida.
Have you ever wanted to ride in a hot air balloon? Well, you can with Orlando Balloon Rides. It's an adventure of a lifetime. Take a ride in a hot air balloon. You will fly with the winds on a truly amazing journey. Explore Florida from the orange groves to the theme parks and more. See it all from a whole new vantage point. Experience total excitement from start to finish. You will ascend above the treetops to several thousand feet. This is an experience of a lifetime. Visit OrlandoBalloonRides.com for more information. That's OrlandoBalloonRides.com. Zoomare Adventure Park Orlando, ziplining at its best. A Zoomare adventure is a great outing for families, friends, or coworkers. This entertaining self-propelled attraction gives both nature lovers and challenge seekers the opportunity to enjoy the thrill of adventure. Feel your adrenaline pump as you conquer abundant treetop challenges, including exhilarating rides on our zipline. Visit Zoomare.us for more information. That's Zoomare.us.
PJ and Friends has several ways to promote your product, service, club, group, or business. You can sponsor a segment or a whole show. Advertising packages are affordable. We can even barter in exchange for goods and services. We can get you heard with live reads, 30 and 60-second commercials. We can do shows live on location. Email us at sales@pjandfriends.com. And don't forget, stop by pjandfriends.com, take a look around, click on the shows option at the menu there, and you can see different shows and different interviews we've done. Take a look at our demographics if you like, see who's been listening, and also make sure you friend us on Facebook. There's a link there to our Facebook page. And now, let's go back to the show. All right, guys. Thank you for your patience there.
Of course.
All right. So what I want to talk about next is one of the things that was up for discussion here in Florida during the election was medical marijuana. What is your view on that? And just start with that. What's your view on medical marijuana?
It works.
Yes. I think two things. One is I think the states like Alaska and Colorado and Washington State that are legalizing and regulating marijuana, that's what they should be doing. Marijuana has been shown to be a less dangerous drug than alcohol, but we have alcohol everywhere.
Right. It's in coffee.
Yeah, but I think that it would make a lot of sense fiscally and in terms of the kind of wasted time fought on the drug war to just simply legalize marijuana. Now, aside from that, medical marijuana, as Darren said, it's been shown to have a number of really salutary effects, including increasing appetite, decreasing pain, decreasing anxiety. There are a lot of different pluses about it, and drug companies are trying to find ways to actually market the useful aspects of THC without having just the drug, because then what you could do is if you didn't use the marijuana itself but you instead use some derivative of it, then they could charge an exorbitant price for that derivative rather than the relatively affordable price that medical marijuana would cost. So
now, one of the, and I may get this wrong because it's been a bit late, but one of the things I saw, one of the proponents is that the way medical marijuana was going to be issued, the way it was going to be accessible, was not going to be just for medical people. In other words, and I guess in California, you can walk into a shop and there's a screen there, and there's a doctor who's licensed God knows where. It says, yes, you're depressed. Here, have some marijuana. My understanding was that was the idea that they were sharing that led to the no being decided.
Well, it was voted yes. Actually, it just was not a supermajority.
Right,
it's not a supermajority. Right.
Of what, 60% or I think
60%.
Yeah,
right.
And it got just short of 60%. So it's not like it didn't win. It won. It just didn't win by enough.
Right, and I apologize. I do remember that. I was surprised that I was surprised when I at the end of the day when I turned the news on and I saw that we had elected who we elected, and then I saw some of the things that said I thought that these things should be. I don't think personally. To be very honest, I've never been high. I've never been drunk. I've never smoked a cigarette. I just can't stand. I've seen people pee their pants. I see no reason to get drunk to piss my pants. I've seen people abuse this stuff. I've got enough issues that I don't need these things. But I think it's just like, while you don't want your pilot drunk, they don't need to be high. There are ways to manage that, and you can manage that and all that stuff through other means. If it helps people, it would really hurt me. I don't know anybody that at least consciously that may have been helped by this, but I'm sure there are people in my life that probably would. But if there's any chance that this can alleviate someone's pain and suffering, certainly we'd want to make sure that that's there. And of course, like anything else, how we see the ads on TV, the commercials about people protecting your medication because your kids are in your house and they might use your drugs. We would definitely want to educate people on protecting themselves and watching how this is.
Lock up your drugs. Don't worry about your guns. Lock up your drugs.
Right.
Lock up your drugs, yes.
Well, hey, since we got on the guns, Orlando has this wonderful new little place where your kids can try a machine gun. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's called college. No, that's not that yet.
or a movie theater if you're texting. No.
Right, yeah.
No, but the place on iDrive now. There's a place on iDrive, right? I think it's right next to that trampoline place that you can go in there, and of course, and they claim, "Oh, don't worry, we have one of our trained people sitting right next to you." Where was that place where they did that out west, and this kid accidentally shot the instructor? I mean, do we really need to be handling machine guns?
No. But I mean, we have a culture in this country where guns are in every TV show and movie. It seems guns are kind of a glorified culture, and we also live in a very fearful culture as well, where we think that there's a threat hiding around every corner, and generally that fear is being borne out by white middle-aged suburbanites, right, and carrying their guns to protect them. But everybody wants to be the hero as well on this, and everybody's walking around like that they're going to be in their own action film, and I don't know what the solution is. I really don't. Because it's, every day you see, some kid that gets shot by her brother or sister because, they found daddy's gun, or the father that shot his daughter.
There was just one yesterday.
Yeah,
I believe
well, of course, there's always
one. Yeah,
there's always one. Yeah, there's always one yesterday. And then even locally, when you have things like the shooting in Melbourne, where the estranged husband came in and shot his wife to injure her, but then shot her manager at the store that she was working, or the restaurant where she was working, because her manager was stepping up to try to protect his employee, which is nice and heroic. But I mean, the more guns we have out there, the more this is going to happen, and the harder it's going to be to eventually rectify something. Because everything that is a mild proposal, whether it's background checks, whether it's tightening the loopholes so we don't have people that are just anonymously buying guns at gun shows or private sales, we're going to continue to have them. And the more that we have them, unfortunately, the more people are going to feel justified in walking around with a firearm that they don't know anything about other than target shooting at the range or at the tourist attraction, which is a lot different than if you were in an actual situation where you needed to use it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about guns is there's an old aphorism that if you see a gun on the stage in a play, that it's going to get used at some point in the play. Well, that's true in life too. You know, if people have a gun, they're going to want to use it when they can. I mean, there are a lot of really responsible gun owners who don't feel that way, but there are people who, you know, when they're angry or in a certain situation where they feel threatened, would use a gun before they would go to a more rational response.
Right.
They would just go straight to the gun. You know, if George Zimmerman hadn't had a gun, Trayvon Martin would probably be alive.
Yeah.
You know, today. Actually, he would be alive. But the gun thing is you know that in France, the whole Charlie Hebdo thing, where the two brothers came in and killed all the cartoonists. Well, someone in Texas, I believe it was in Texas, a gun rights group, reenacted that massacre, but gave someone a gun. And it turns out that even though every time they tried to redo it, to basically rerun the situation, everybody still got killed.
Right.
So it didn't matter. The fact that someone was armed didn't make a difference in terms of whether or not it would have saved those people's lives.
See, and here's the thing about the cause for that massacre. I'm confused by that, and it's not so much that they don't. Whatever their belief is, that's all fine and dandy. But if no one is allowed to show an image of Muhammad, how would they know that the image was real? So if someone does a caricature of them or a cartoon of them, how does anybody know that that's the real, or is it just because they've labeled it Muhammad?
Well, that's actually a misconception, too, because there's not...
True,
I mean,
that's the Quran versus the Hadith, yeah.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of... I think the majority of Muslims, I could be wrong on this, but the majority of Muslims, I think, are okay with people showing images of the Prophet, and that's fine. But there are people that aren't like that, and I'm, it's very funny that the conservatives rallied around Charlie Hebdo, the writers there, and then the editor of Charlie Hebdo said, "We vomit on all our new supporters," because a lot of conservatives were using the Charlie Hebdo attacks and a way to stand in solidarity with Charlie Hebdo. And I will say this, Bill Maher did the same thing, which is, well, I have a right to be offensive. Well, you don't really have a right to be offensive. You have a right to say what you want, sure, and people should not kill you for your opinions, no matter how offensive they are. But it still doesn't give you a carte blanche opportunity to just be a jerk to folks. So,
but the marketplace should decide whether or not, if Bill Maher is offensive or if Charlie Hebdo is offensive, then if people don't purchase them or don't watch his show, then the market is speaking. That's something that we believe in this country, is that the marketplace of ideas. So you have a right to be offensive. You may suffer repercussions because of that, but you have a right to be offensive. I mean, Maher is a perfect example of someone who suffered repercussions, because back when we got attacked after 9/11, he said that the people who were pushing buttons and basically blowing up things by remote control or from a plane were more cowardly than the people who got on the plane and flew it into the World Trade Centers, because those people gave up their lives. You can say lots of things about them, but you couldn't say they were cowards. Well, when Mark said that, it caused an uproar, and he ended up getting fired from ABC, where he had his show. So, there are repercussions. But one of the things that we were talking about before was the image of Muhammad. There are different. There's the Quran, and then there's something called the Hadith. And the Hadith is a whole bunch of lay people who wrote after the Prophet had died, and a lot of Sharia law and a lot of the other really onerous parts of Islamic sort of fundamentalist madness come from the Hadith and not from the Quran. So that's one of the problems, is that people follow this other. It's sort of the same way that there are writings in Christian and Jewish lore that aren't necessarily the holy books, but that are considered to be sacred texts because they were written by holy people, and so people basically follow those, and sometimes it actually conflicts with the actual what's in the holy books. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I didn't realize that, like in Christianity, you've got Jesus and you've got Mary, Joseph, and all these religious figures and so forth, and we celebrate those images and those beliefs and those entities, so to speak. And I understand protecting it. American flag, for example, we protect that. I just didn't understand if no one's seen it, how would they know if they? But I guess people have seen the image. I wouldn't know what the image was.
Well, you can burn an American flag. I mean, you're allowed to.
Yeah, but we still, but we as Americans still want to protect that. I mean, granted, it's a freedom of speech thing, but it's something we hold true in value. And if someone were to desecrate it, it would anger some people. But I don't know if we'd go chopping people's heads off for that. But anyway, neither here nor there. My thought was if no one had ever seen the image of Muhammad, then how would they know that was the image of Muhammad? But I guess that was my misunderstanding. All right, so last night I looked at this morning. I watched part of the State of the Union address. 58 months of job growth. Do they count one job being added as growth?
Wait, 58 months of job growth. Do they what now?
Well, here's the thing. People, this country is still suffering greatly, and the numbers, I think, for unemployment are skewed because people are just, if you're not applying or not qualified or do not qualify for unemployment, how are you measuring those people? And you can't. So all this, we have fewer people on unemployment. Well, yeah, you are, because they've run out. And so, granted, people, the president said we had 58 straight months of job growth.
Yes.
How valid is that?
That's very valid. Even if you say the numbers are skewed, and the unemployment rate that is quoted in the paper is a different number than, say, like the people that are out of work, and then the people that are out of the workforce completely and disabled, and so on and so on. But that rate is still going down. It's gone from 8.2 or 8.3% down to like 6.8, I think, what the last estimate is. It's slow, but it's still progress. And
I think it's called the U6. There's a number of different statistics that they collect. One of them includes discouraged workers and workers who have stopped looking for work because they don't feel like they can get any. And that rate is actually, I think it's like around 11% when you add them together. When you add the discouraged workers and the other workers, it's like 11, 12%, possibly even more. But that number has been dropping along with the other unemployment rate as well. So they've been dropping about the same amount, which means that group of the discouraged workers is staying about the same. But there are jobs being created for other individuals. So
eventually it will all, work itself out. It always does. But, the workers' employment rate is the last thing to recover in an economic recovery. And it also doesn't help that every single package that the Democrats had been proposing in Congress for the past 6 years have been blocked at every turn by a party that has declared as soon as the president took office that it was their objective to stop him at every turn and make sure that he did not have any political successes. And that, to me, is the most cynical thing of all. So
I'm down with that. I agree.
See,
now, I think that part of the problem in the country is that the recovery which has been happening has been the benefits of that recovery have been concentrated at the top. The top 1%, the people at the very apex of our economic system, have seen tremendous growth in their wealth over the last 6 years. The average worker has seen a small growth, but not anything near what should be merited given their productivity raise. Because productivity has gone up and wages haven't risen with productivity, which is what it should be. But instead what's happened is that profits and the amount of money going to the very top have risen. So instead of that prosperity being shared, what's happened is the prosperity has simply gone to the top, which is part of the reason why the president proposed last night some fairly simple things that could help to redistribute some of that wealth, not allowing some of the tax dodges that exist. There's one that Romney used a number of times that with his kids with trusts. It's actually pretty clever. It allows you to give stocks to your kids at a certain amount. So, for example, if it's in a company that Romney was about to invest in, he would give money in a stock. Now, the basis for that would be, let's say, $10,000. It turns out that the stuff was worth $1 million, but you wouldn't have to pay, because of what they call the stepped-up rate, you wouldn't have to actually pay tax on the $1 million. You would pay tax on the $10,000. So you could actually have massive capital gains without having to pay any tax if you passed it on to a family member using this particular trust method. That they want to get rid of things like that. Obama would like to get rid of things like that.
There's another thing that no one talks about, and the fact of the matter is this administration, through partisanship coming from the people in Congress that block his proposals, but also just out of focus, this administration and this Congress have not done anything to help with alleviating poverty in this country at all. And you can see the disdain that is brought up by finally a president trying to push a minimum wage on people, and you can or on the country, and you can see that there's just so much disdain for people making what should actually be more than what the president is proposing if you pegged the minimum wage to inflation. And
it should be a living wage rather than a minimum wage. It should be more like $15 an hour is what it should be.
Yeah, but okay. While I agree, people need to be making more money, and the average American, I would say, is at or below the poverty level. It's just, many of them are. You raise the price, you raise everything else is going to go up. So won't it? It'll mute the effect of the increase, would it not?
No, that doesn't bear out with the evidence that we have already. Seattle passed a living wage ordinance to, I believe, $11 an hour. The city of SeaTac, where the airport is, passed a $15 an hour minimum wage increase. And I can tell you both anecdotally from being there recently and also just from what is bearing out, that doesn't affect prices enough to cause any sort of sluggishness in the economy. In fact, the Seattle area that has always produced a lot of good, high-tech, high-paying type jobs has always been thriving, even through the last few economic crises.
Well, even when you raise like the minimum wage, it puts more money out there that people are spending. So it actually helps drive the economy. So even if things may cost a few pennies more, you've got more people with money to spend on those things. So it actually helps the businesses that need the business.
Okay, so let me think here. I had a question. I lost it. All right, so we changed that. How has so I agree. We all need a bit more money. We have in Florida we have so many juggernaut companies like Disney and Universal that they don't pay their people much of anything. These poor people are making pennies. The average worker is not making much money at all. And it kills me because you'll go to these theme parks and you'll see these poor people taking tickets at the gate, or their food servers, or their they might make, I don't know what they're making now, but at one point they were making $7 an hour, and God forbid they do something wrong or sneeze wrong, and they're yelled at and they're asked for their lead, and the poor guy's getting threatened with his job, and who knows. But
can I mention a thing that would make a big difference that the president proposed last night?
Of course,
is sick leave. He proposed something that we've tried to get here.
Oh yeah.
But it was basically torpedoed by the Orange County Commission. But the notion would be that no matter where you worked, no matter what you did, if you worked full-time hours, you would get 7 sick days. And if you worked less than a full-time job, you would get a prorated amount of sick days based on how many hours you worked. So if, for example, like me, I work at a theme park, I work probably about average, let's say 24 hours a week. So if I average 24 hours a week instead of 40, I don't have any benefits right now at all. I don't have any sick time, I don't have any vacation time. But if this law were to pass and we were to have sick leave, then I would earn 24/40ths of 7 days. So I would get about close to 4 days of sick time instead of none. And that could make a huge difference to people who can't afford to stay home and take care of a kid, or can't afford to stay home if they're sick. There's a lot of people in food service who can't afford to stay home because they don't work enough to have sick time. And so they come in sick, and then they prepare food sick, and they pass on the diseases to other people. So it's really kind of a no-brainer to have sick leave, but it's something that the Republicans will fight tooth and nail.
Well, a lot of companies have installed a what they call an occurrence system, or a penalty system. I think some of the theme parks do this as well, where if you're out sick, or you call out, or you leave early and it's unannounced or unplanned, you get marks against you, and so many marks require you to get fired. So there's one company here in Orlando that it's a call center. If you go in sick, and they know you're sick because they're so worried about everybody else, they will send you home and then ding you for sending you home.
Wow. I wouldn't be surprised if, the place where I work does the same thing. You're pointed if you call in sick. And if you start out with a certain number of points, and if you get down to 0, you're fired. So if you had a long run of being sick, let's say you had something that caused you to call in on a periodic basis. Let's say you had some sort of an ongoing health condition, diabetes, let's say, where you have 3 or 4 incidents over the course of a few months, you could end up getting fired because of that.
Right.
So,
right. But while here's the thing: while I understand, especially in closed circumstances like call centers and stuff, where it's like a daycare center, colds and stuff go through that like wildfire, and I understand that. But if you use your sick time, you get dinged. If you if you need to see a doctor or whatever, you need to plan it out. Like so, one company I worked for years ago, they gave you plenty of sick time, but you had to plan it out, even if you were sick. So you had to go in and then be sent home. Okay, I got written up once, and I'm like, well, this makes well, you need to, I said, so you mean to tell me I need to plan being sick? Well, yeah, and this was their response. So it was, in other words, they were perceived to be this generous company, but what it turned out is they made it so that the practical use of what they were offering you, no matter what you did, you got slapped. I think that's a bad thing. Let's talk real quick about the current fuel prices. The fuel has come down. We have seen a lot of travel recently. We haven't seen much change in airplane tickets, which we should, but we're not. What has caused the gas prices to come down, and how long do you think that's going to last?
Well, the Saudis, the Saudis decided that there was so much success with the North American shale oil boom, which is the tar sands in Alberta, the Bakken Formation in North Dakota, that they turned on their spigots to lower the price. In doing
They're
so,
driving a lot of business in the States.
Right, but they basically don't want the Americans to have their own energy source. They're just trying to control the market like anything. On a good side, there's a lot more people traveling. You're going to see a lot more sales with airlines, I'm sure, coming up. I'm sure a lot of airlines are going to copy the model that Southwest used back before the spike in energy prices, which is, store some fuel and buy it up at the current price, so that way you don't have to pay an exorbitant price when the price goes up again. But that's basically what we're seeing, and you're already seeing the effect. The negative effect is felt. I think one of the larger companies that's mining in North Dakota just announced that they're letting 7,000 workers go. So if oil prices continue to fall, you're going to see a lot of that boom in North Dakota dry up very quickly, because it's just not going to be economic to get that oil out of the tar sands.
Right, because of the cost.
How long do you think this can last, though? Is it going to be a while, or are we going to get someday smacked and turned around and where to go?
We will eventually. I mean, I think that what you're looking at is, to a great extent, is the Saudis trying to basically Walmart the American oil producers. So they're coming in, and what they're doing is they're trying to push the price down so that it isn't economically viable for their competitors. And then once they've driven their competitors out of the market, they can lower the supply again, drive up the cost again, and basically profit from it. Once they've, because then it's going to take time for those other producers to get back into business again. They won't be able to just gear up immediately to take advantage of the higher prices. So they're basically trying to do what Walmart does when it comes in and corners the market and drives all the smaller businesses out of business, and then they can start ratcheting their prices up once they've done that.
This is why you're seeing such a push for the Keystone XL pipeline right now, because oil companies who, through the senators and Congress people, they've contributed heavily to their campaigns, of course. Oil companies see that, okay, well, we're getting into a danger point where the Saudis are going to be able to control the market again. So they're really pushing for this Keystone to get the oil out into the market. So that way...
Well, but they were pushing for it before the Saudis started dropping the oil price.
Right,
and,
but the renewed...
And that isn't even oil that's going to be... That kind of oil isn't even the kind that we use mostly here in the States. It's mostly going to go to China.
So what effect...
Heavy crude.
What effect, good and bad, will the pipeline have on America?
Well, good thing is it will put a little bit more difficulty for the Saudis to try to control the market. The bad thing is we're going to have a death funnel full of the dirtiest fuel going right through the most arable farmland in the world and one of the largest aquifers in the North American continent. So I think the stakes are a little high.
Right?
Yeah, the stakes are really high because unlike a train car, which will derail And although it's tragic, as we've seen, to see a fuel spill from a train car, it's a lot bigger spill if it's in a pipeline, as we've also seen. And these are just smaller pipelines.
Does it become a terrorist target?
I guess. Yeah, but everything is a terrorist to target, and I think I think the bigger threat is the fact that we're going to be funneling the dirtiest fuel that has the most carbon through the farmland and the aquifer. So,
well, that's the question: is there are different costs that we can talk about. I mean, we can talk about the benefit of jobs, but apparently there's only a handful of full-time jobs that are going to be created from it, because most of the jobs are in Canada that are being created from it, because that's where the oil is being taken from. The other stuff there will be jobs as they build the pipeline, but we'd be a lot better off using those same construction workers to build infrastructure here in the United States rather than a pipeline. But you've got to think about the costs beyond that in terms of what does it do in terms of climate change, because this is really dirty oil, and it's going to release yet more carbon into the atmosphere. And instead of us looking for ways to move away from a carbon-based fuel economy, we are embracing a carbon-based fuel economy, doubling down on it, which means that we're going to accelerate the climate change that's already happening. We're seeing changes in the oceans. We're seeing die-offs of ocean life. We're seeing the changing carbon in the atmosphere, so that out of the last 15, the hottest years on record, 14 of the last 15 have occurred in the last 15 years. So we're looking at tremendous possible long-term downside from continuing to embrace an oil-based economy. So, I think, there's the problem of the pipeline rupturing and polluting, but you've also got this problem of continuing to pump carbon into the atmosphere and watching more climate change occur. We're really potentially destroying ourselves by doing this.
Right.
So, and there's a lot of evidence that we're doing that.
Lest you think that the push for the Keystone Pipeline is the inspiration comes from creating American jobs. Democrats have attached a couple amendments to the bill. Some of them are just kind of spiteful, and then there's one from Senator Al Franken that he attached an amendment that stated that the pipeline in the United States could only be built from American steel, and the Republicans said, no, we're not having that, and they defeated the amendment. So that
there was one that was also
right
Bernie
there.
Sanders. Was it Bernie Sanders that said the one that they have to actually vote whether or not climate change is happening?
Oh yeah, I think that one's still going through. So that'll be an interesting.
Yeah, that one's still going through.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see.
Because the vast majority of scientists say that we are changing the climate, and if you look at changes in weather patterns, you look at flooding, you look at coastlines changing, you look at die-offs in the ocean, the acidification of the ocean, all these different things that are completely consistent with what was predicted would happen if we put more carbon into the atmosphere. We're changing the world. And there are people who don't believe we're doing it or capable of doing it, but we are. We're pretty amazing when you look at the level of what we can destroy. It's pretty stunning.
For every cold winter and every huge snowfall that we see, which is also a predicted effect, the ones where Fox News usually has a story on the fact that, there's a blizzard in New York, and Al Gore is fat. Something around that. But the thing about that is, for every cold, blizzardy day, again, which is predicted by scientists climatologists who study this thing, there's record warm temperatures in Seattle and Vancouver and Fairbanks, Alaska. I think a couple of weeks ago, Fairbanks, Alaska was actually warmer than we were in Orlando. like at a 54 degrees, which is amazingly warm for them. So you're going to see a lot of that happening. But it snowed where I live, so we're okay.
All right.
I'll tell you, the worst part of it is we're going to have less shellfish and more jellyfish and more mosquitoes. That's one of the side effects of climate change. Is that jellyfish? The acidification. Do you love jellyfish?
No, I don't love jellyfish. There was a restaurant that when we went on vacation, there was a Chinese restaurant that was serving sweet and spicy jellyfish, and we almost tried it, but yeah.
Well, you may get your chance someday, because we are acidifying the ocean, and as the acidity rises, it makes it harder for mollusks to form shells.
Right.
And so, and the acidity of the ocean is also more hospitable to jellyfish.
Right.
Which I don't like jellyfish.
I need to take another quick commercial break, and I have a couple more questions, and then because we're almost at the hour, and then we'll go from there. Give me one moment here.
Okay.
You're listening to PJ and Friends on PJandFriends.com. Orlando, Florida.
Zoomare Adventure Park Orlando, ziplining at its best. A Zoomare adventure is a great outing for families, friends, or coworkers. This entertaining self-propelled attraction gives both nature lovers and challenge seekers the opportunity to enjoy the thrill of adventure. Feel your adrenaline pump as you conquer abundant treetop challenges, including exhilarating rides on our zipline. Visit Zoomare.us for more information. That's Zoomare.us. Have you ever wanted to ride in a hot air balloon? Well, you can with Orlando Balloon Rides. It's an adventure of a lifetime. Take a ride in a hot air balloon. You will fly with the winds on a truly amazing journey. Explore Florida from the orange groves to the theme parks and more. See it all from a whole new vantage point. Experience total excitement from start to finish. You will ascend above the treetops to several thousand feet. This is an experience of a lifetime. Visit OrlandoBalloonRides.com for more information. That's OrlandoBalloonRides.com.
Hey, PJ and Friends has several ways to promote your product, service, club, group, or business. You can sponsor a segment or a whole show. Our packages are affordable. We even barter in exchange for goods and services. Want to mow my lawn? You can have a commercial. We can get you heard. We have live reads, which this is, and I did well today. 30 and a 60-second commercial. We can do shows live on location. Email us at sales@pjandfriends.com. Don't forget to stop by pjandfriends.com. We got shows, previous interviews, previous shows, our marketing information, as well as a link to our Facebook page. Now let's go back to our interviewees. Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hey.
All right. We were talking about fuel a moment ago. What I want to talk about is there's a talk in Florida about, because of all the economy vehicles, the electrical vehicles, about changing, because now those vehicles don't pay gas tax, which fuel tax pays for roads and improvements and so forth. They want to talk about taxing mileage. Your opinions on this?
Heart blood, yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, sorry, man. It just is. It's an idea that will never. I don't think it's ever going to pass, because even though a lot of drivers, including myself, drive around with some sort of SunPass, EasyPass, RFID tracking system in their cars right now to pay tolls on toll roads, and these RFIDs have actually been used in court cases to track whereabouts. Not so much an accurate tracking of destinations, but to put people in certain spots for alibis, and also to refute alibis in court cases. But even though we voluntarily put those in our cars, we're not. I don't think American, and definitely Floridians, are not going to be okay with giving up that much privacy by having a mandated device in your car that tracks not necessarily your movements, but tracks exactly how far you've driven. I don't think that's going to pass anytime soon.
No, and the other possibility that some states have talked about is a surcharge on vehicles that are hybrids or electric vehicles. that you would pay when you were paying for your registration. It would cost you more to register a car. I don't think that would go very far either. Although the people who would raise the biggest stink about having to pay extra taxes probably are not the people driving the electric vehicles. So
right. The easiest solution is to take the gas tax and raise it and peg it to inflation, or peg it to the cost of fuel, or peg it to something that will slide so it never becomes obsolete. We have to pay for our roads. Our roads are something that the market will not find a solution for. We all use them, so there's got to be a way there. But I think that, if there's a way that, I have a hybrid or an electric vehicle, so I'm paying less taxes even though I'm using the road more, well, you know what? That's great. That means more people will buy electric and hybrid cars, and then we'll eventually get out of using fossil fuels altogether. Once that happens, then we can address other funding sources. But I think for now, that's what's going to stay.
Well, I would certainly like to see something. There's talk of a carbon tax rather than a simple gas tax in which all forms of carbon would be taxed, and to different extents. And if you did that, then there would be an advantage to driving a car, but you could use the carbon tax to help pay for infrastructure. So that's another possibility. That I think would work better, personally.
Yeah, I for me, for example, with privacy, our Central Florida Expressway Authority, whatever they're called now, they've moved away from the movable transponders. They want you to put that thing on the window so that you can't move it. And if you do, then you got to buy a new one. But also, it forces you to keep it in the car. Where I like being able to take, if I'm borrowing someone's car, I'd like to be able to put it in their car so I can not pay.
I do the same thing.
Tolls, but so I don't have mine in my window, and I don't. It's in a place where it doesn't. Because again, I don't mean to sound like a nut, but I really don't want them knowing everywhere I am. But that being said, and a lot of times cars are coming out now, especially if they're financed with GPS hidden in them, so that if they have to come after the car, they can do that and they can kill the car wherever it's at. So nowadays, finance companies and car dealers are putting these things. And oftentimes they'll remove it once the car's paid off if they think about it. They'll have you come in and do that final inspection or whatever, and they remove the device. But there was a case a couple of months ago where a gentleman had killed somebody or hurt somebody, and they were looking for him, and it turned out that the used car dealer that sold him his car had one in the car, and that's how they found him.
Wow.
So it's happening anyway. Now, with privacy being said, I want to segue into one more thing I wanted to ask about is a popular thing nowadays is the police officers want body cameras. And I have gotten into this kick. I was looking for some material to talk about this because I believe it changes all the privacy things we as Americans enjoy. And I did some research. I was trying to find research. All I came up with video after video after video of people finding different ways to assert their rights when they got pulled over. Or they showed videos of cops coming to the house and they had the body cameras and they weren't opening their door saying, "I'm sorry, if you don't have a warrant, you're not coming in." While I think it's a good thing as far as, for the thing in Ferguson and New York and so forth. Of course, we had the video of the New York guy. It didn't change what happened. What are your views on our privacy as it relates to these body cameras? I mean, are we going too far? I mean, at what point do we? I mean, we're almost getting stripped naked at the airport as it is. But what should we just walk around with nothing on?
Well, the TSA is a different subject than body cameras.
Right. But
I like body cameras. I like the idea of police having body cameras because if you're in a public place, there's nothing that says that anybody can't be taping at any given time with a cell phone. This would allow to clear up, both for cops and for individuals, to clear up the reality of the situation. And in the areas where they have put body cameras on the cops, like in Colorado, they've done it. They found that the number of incidences of complaints about cops by citizens and the number of problems in the interactions between the police and citizens, both have dropped dramatically. So I think it puts everybody on their best behavior, because you realize, hey, I'm getting filmed now, and it's in a public place. It's not like it's in your home. I don't know the difference if someone comes in with a search warrant, although, they often are filming anyway, even if they don't have body cameras on them.
Let's change that a little bit. The police have come to your door for whatever reason. Maybe you haven't called them. They're coming to your door for whatever reason. You open your door. They're wearing a body camera. So anything that they view now, and who knows what you have out? God knows what it is. And now anything in your home, a routine, whatever, becomes admissible. My question is, don't you believe at this point, we now as Americans need to be smart enough to say, even at a traffic stop anymore, you don't have to say a word. Granted, you might have a dialogue which would relieve you of a ticket, but and nowadays they're recording. You could say something, and the cop's got an itch, or who knows what, and it leads to something more, and it shouldn't be. Are we now? I'm going to remain silent. Give me the ticket, or am I free to go? I mean, we have to now at this point bone up on our privacy rights, our rights as citizens.
Well, we should anyway.
Yeah. And if they come into your house with a search warrant, everything's admissible anyway.
I understand that, but we're not talking about a search warrant. We're talking. Example: they've come to the door to let you know about something going on in the neighborhood. You open your door and they see something on the table. Bottom line is now it's on camera. Now that's admissible. And now you're screwed. Who knows what it is? But the bottom line is now where people would open the door for the police. Here's what I'm seeing. I've seen, and I went looking for material to find out what the law was, what common sense should be with your interactions with the police now. And what I found, unfortunately, was a lot of videos and people that are testing the amendment, so to speak. They walk up to public buildings, for example, and they start filming. And, of course, they get accosted by police, and they get let go once they realize that they're exerting their right and all that. But the bottom line is we now have cameras everywhere, and you have these police that you can't let in. You can't, you get pulled. A routine example, a DUI checkpoint, for example. There was one video where the guy, and it was here in Florida, it's a group here in Florida, where they have like this plastic sheet that they put their license in, they put their registration in, they put their insurance card in, and there's a thing in there saying, I have a right to remain silent, I'd like my lawyer. They hang it outside their window as they drive by, and they roll up their window. And the reasoning is this. You don't actually need to talk to them. You have a right to be silent. More often than not, they look at it and they just send them on their way, because if you open your window and you say anything, they can view, and let's say you stutter. That stutter, he was slurring his words. Or they can claim they smelled something in the car. So by having your window up and doing all these things, you're protecting yourselves. If not, you're open to whatever they might choose to do. And police are allowed to lie where the citizens aren't supposed to lie. So what do you think about all this?
I think that these situations are a lot less likely to happen than a situation where a police officer shoots a suspect or kills a suspect for no reason whatsoever, as we've seen in a lot of the recent cases.
Right. Oh, yeah.
I think that is far more likely to happen than the proposal that you are saying that could happen as well. But at the same token, yeah, we should know. I mean, people that say, like, I know my rights are usually the people that don't have any understanding of them. So, yeah, it would be really good for people to read up on the Bill of Rights and figure out what you can and can't say, or what you should say in a situation or should not say in a situation with the police. So it's a far different thing than the minority father that is telling his son to act in a certain way with the police. That's different.
You know what? And that's something that really struck me with all of this, is how many of people of color, and it wasn't just Afro Americans. It was Middle Eastern people and so forth that would have these conversations. That my parents, when I went out, I don't ever remember officer friendly came to school, and these were people you went to and asked for help, kind of thing. and I was never sat down to be warned of them. Where there's profiling, and you're automatically, it's sad that in this country we're having to have those conversations with our children, and what a shame to have that 1 ounce of thought in your mind as you live in this country that is today the day. Is he going to be safe? If he has an encounter, is he going to or she going to be safe? That's
an encounter with the people that are
be
supposed to protect you.
What?
An encounter with the people that are supposed to protect you.
Right.
That's the most horrible thing of all. Is that they're the people that are supposed to protect you, and instead they become very often the source of a problem.
That's the thing. I one of the things about Ferguson that drove me crazy is I sympathize with those people is, we had tanks on the street. We had armored vehicles on the street. It looked like a militarized zone.
We had police officers pointing weapons at the crowd.
And I
Whether
couldn't
they were
believe.
Use them or not, you should never point a weapon at a crowd.
Now, here's the thing. I get some, what was it, mid-'90s, late '80s, where we had in L.A., where they discovered the armor-piercing bullet and people's vests weren't whole. And I understand we need a certain level of response for a certain situation. But a little town like Ferguson, in my opinion, does not need an emergency response vehicle. They don't need this thing that knocks down your doors. If you have that kind of a problem, then you're not doing something right. You're not L.A. where you might have So, and if you do have these things, it shouldn't be the common place to bring them out. It should be the rare exception that you bring them out.
Do you want to know who to blame?
Who?
The military-industrial complex. The groups that make these weapons have pushed because once Homeland Security was formed, they set up systems where local police departments could get surplus weaponry. So a lot of it's former military weaponry that then the federal government gave grants for the localities to buy them, and the money is going to the weapons manufacturers. So once again, the people who make the weapons are the ones who are pushing to have the weapons get utilized. That's why they're in these small communities.
And here's the thing. While I understand the police need to have a certain presence, a certain atmosphere, a certain authority, and I appreciate that given the situation, but at the same time, I have a problem when I... Okay.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I heard someone in the background. When I see the cops in the videos, like there's been a shooting and they're in the background and they've got these this tough looking these badass glasses and they're dressed like they're ready for war and they're wearing
camo.
Yeah, they're wearing camo and they're laughing and joking. Meanwhile. And if you ever were to question a cop, why are you laughing? Have you ever been in this situation? We're laughing because it's the way we deal with it. No. I want to believe that this guy is going to be, if I'm an asshole, you need to treat me like an asshole. But if I'm in trouble and I need your help, I expect you to be able to help me. I don't think we're, coming across as this badass police officer is the thing that we need. That's the military's job. That's the National Guard's job. When that comes time, let them deal with it. But our police,
but even then, it's problematic. And we do this in other countries. We have this. When you have weapons like that you can kind of hide behind, you get very callous about how you behave, and there's a real danger that people are going to become distant from the people that they're supposed to be either protecting or certainly there are enemies that you have to fight, but at the same time, if you're like in Iraq or Afghanistan, you're also trying to win over the populace, and it doesn't help if you're running around with these weapons, laughing, wearing camo, doing the same things that these police were doing in small towns.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When I saw the shooting, of the two police officers in New York, I felt horrible for these poor guys. They're sitting there doing their jobs. They're sitting in their patrol car. But the bottom line is, unfortunately, things like these need to happen to remind them that you're human. You guys are not gods, and I don't want these things to happen. But at the same time, it was coming. We look at how they've behaved as a whole. We got some pretty bad people out there, and the old Southern.
Well, they didn't bring this on themselves. I mean, those cops, that's one of the dangers of being a policeman. But being a policeman is still safer than most other jobs. Yeah, you're safer being a policeman than you are in construction in terms of the chances of getting hurt or killed. So, it's not that it's inherently unsafe, but when it is unsafe, it's very unsafe. They didn't cause this. The police didn't cause this. The person who did this was a douchebag who shot his girlfriend and then was looking to create more mayhem, and so drove up and decided he was going to kill some cops.
Right. Which was denounced immediately by Eric Garner's family, by the way, and Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. But I saw a lot of people in the media say, "Oh, there's no response from Al Sharpton." And Al Sharpton came right out and said, "No, this is bad. Don't do this."
Mm-hmm.
I think we also have a problem in this country with a fetishization of our first responders. Even by saying the word first responders, I'm falling into that trap. After 9/11, we put paramedics and police officers up on this pedestal of heroic proportions and pretty much blanketed them all with the title of hero, when in actuality, being a cop doesn't make you a hero. Being a cop makes you a good person, but there's also bad people that are out there too. Just like
being a cop makes you a cop.
Yeah.
Being a cop makes you a cop. That's what you are.
Right.
You're not necessarily a hero or a villain. You're a policeman.
It's funny you talk about 9/11 because several years ago I was over in Ormond Beach or Daytona Beach for one reason or another, and I was in a McDonald's. Okay, and some guy in the drive-thru took a picture of the person. Apparently, they had a complaint or some issue, and the person didn't have their name tag and wouldn't give them their name. I'm standing at the counter. I see the interaction. They take a picture. There's two police officers in the restaurant. The lady complains. They go outside and they pull the guy over, have him stop in the parking lot, and they come in and they try to negotiate what was going on, and they basically try to intimidate this guy to delete his picture. And the guys no, and these guys were really, really adamant. And what they used was, you don't understand. Since 9/11, we have to be careful. You're driving up to this thing and you're taking this picture of this person. And the guy was, you could tell he was shaking. He was shaking because these two cops really had no business involved in this at all, because he hadn't robbed anybody, done anything. He took a picture so he could refer to the person when he complained. Okay, and so they stop him. They bring him into the McDonald's, which has cameras all over the place. And thank God for he had the smarts. And these two cops are, when he said, "Well, why are you stopping me? What are you doing? What you brought me in here?" And the response was, "Well, since 9/11, we have to be really secure why you're taking pictures of people here." And he knew his rights. He said, "I'm not deleting anything." And they were just like towering over this poor guy. And he pointed to the camera. He said, "Hey, you guys want to keep this up? That's all fine and dandy." And they eventually shut up and went away. And he drove off, and they followed him. I'm sure waiting for him to make a wrong left turn. But you're right. I see. While 9/11 was horrific, and we as Americans made many changes and are still making changes and adapting to what that brought to our world, it's not an excuse to throw away common sense and to be decent Americans. And I think that's where we're, even as police, police have a duty to be decent. And I think a majority of them are. But you got that one bad apple, and when you have that one bad apple, how do you know which apple's bad?
Well, and the difference between someone going up and taking pictures of like a utility facility where they could possibly be trying to bomb it, and taking a picture of somebody at McDonald's who they were complaining about, there seems to be a large difference in those two.
Yes.
And of course, that's according to certain Fox News hosts. We know that terrorists are brown people and not white people. So there you go.
Hey, listen, we're coming up on the end here. I want to thank you guys very much for your time today. Thank you. What's going on with you two? Mark, you're performing now. Are you in anything we need to look at anytime soon? Anything new?
No, if you ever want to see where I'm performing and when, you can go to marklainer.com, MarkLainer.com, and click on the calendar, and you can see where I'm performing. And you can also check out like my reel and some short films I've been in, that kind of stuff.
Can we get your e-pass transponder so we can track where you are every minute? No.
Yes.
Okay.
That's pretty much how it works.
All right. Very good. And
you can see me at SAC Comedy Lab. You can just check the schedule at sac.com to see if I'm in. I'm in actually this weekend, I think, Saturday night.
You're teaching now, too. You're teaching there now, too.
I'm teaching improv there as well. There might be a book in the works this year. I don't know if I can get off my butt and do it. Yeah, I know. And if you don't like improv and like music, then you can go to the Orange Creek Writers Facebook page. That is my band that I'm in with my friend who's also named Darren, who is a state senator in Florida's legislature.
I didn't know he was a part of that group.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
Wait,
we're looking for a drummer right now.
Wait,
so if
he
you know
was.
anybody.
What do you mean he was? What happened? He got elected, right?
No, he is. He still is.
Oh,
is.
Okay. So
Yeah.
What is he? I haven't seen you guys. Where are you next?
Where am I next?
You don't know, do you?
Oh, I don't know where I am next. Yeah, I never know. I like to win.
I didn't know. I knew you did the campaigning for him, which I really feel bad because I kind of screwed you over last time. But I was just out of it. I was not in a place to do anything.
Actually, we're playing tomorrow night. We're playing for Planned Parenthood of Greater Orlando's Rock and Roll. We're just kind of having some fun. Like I said, we're looking for a drummer, so I'm actually filling in on the drums, which will be interesting. And then after that, we're doing an event with the Orange County Democratic Party. The former chair, Doug Head, has a thing called First Fridays, where it's kind of a social networking group, and we're going to be coming at that in March. So you can go to the
Maybe
Orange
I'll go.
County
I get
Democratic.
invited and I never go.
Yeah, well,
I get invited to the First Fridays, but I never go. Maybe I'll go to this one.
You should go to this one in March, definitely. So
I
even
will.
if you're, that one, I guess we're playing some partisan venues, but you can just check our Facebook page when we get a nonpartisan venue where we can talk about the politics. We just play the music. So
now you sell vintage clothing, ties, things like that.
We still do that right now. In fact,
we know.
I've got a whole.
We heard.
Yeah, we heard. Yep. So I got a whole bunch of them. You can check that out at envyoflorida.com. Envy of Florida on Etsy.com. So I'm doing a lot of things this year, as I am always. So there you go.
Very cool. All right, guys, I want to thank you very much for your time. I will talk to you guys later, and you guys have a good day.
Thanks,
you too. Thanks, PJ.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Mark Lainer and Darren Vierday. They are two guys that I like. Mark I met at he performed at Comedy Warehouse and then at the Disney, and I showed several things there and did SAC Comedy Lab. And Darren I met through SAC Comedy Lab and other things, and he's just been a good friend since. You guys have a great day. Remember, visit pjandfriends.com, find out what's going on. And you know what? You guys have a good afternoon.
You're listening to PJ and Friends.